When you're over in your United States citizen status, there's nothing in the law that gives you rights. It's all privileges and immunities. Exercise the First Amendment. Under 18 U.S.C. 3571, it's $250,000 every time the Bill of Rights is violated. You cannot swear an oath to support the Constitution and then war against it at the same time. I go, you know what my problem is? I don't have your name. I don't have your good faith surety bond. I don't have your oath of office. I don't have your supervisor's name, his badge number, and his oath of office, and his good faith surety bond. And I'm not answering another question until I get all that, because if you violate my rights, you're going to be a primary defendant in a federal lawsuit. Do I make myself clear? What I've been up to over the last few years, I was out in California, and we know that these transgender movement that's going on in this country, you know, everybody has equal rights under the law, right? The greatest minority in this country is the individual. And what they want to try to do is separate and divide us into groups when there's no such thing as group rights. And so Senator Scott Wiener, by the way, which I'm going to be filing a federal lawsuit against. In fact, the information against the transgender affirmation's on the table, and I'm impeaching a couple federal judges. You know, we have people that swear an oath to the Constitution that they will support and defend your rights. And so what we need to do is hold them accountable. Like Mark has this wonderful establishment in here, and he's the owner. And if his employees and waiters go around stabbing people and abusing them with forks, guess what he's going to do? He's going to say, you're fired, right? So we need to stand up against our public servants, and hold them accountable. Well, we do have some great public servants. We have some great people in the room here. Is Tammy Nichols here? Can I get a wave there? Okay, we have our great legislator, Tammy, in the house. And so we're going to give some people an opportunity to do an affidavit of status, and I'm going to share that later. And so I'm going to share, we got two statuses. One of us is we the people, and the other status is a U.S. citizenship. And the first time that I heard this, my brain went tilt. Like, what? I have two statuses. But we'll get that there in a minute. So we're going to do some Bill of Rights training. We're going to get to know how the Bill of Rights applies to us every day. And we know during the COVID, how many COVID laws were passed during COVID? 0. Okay, so hopefully we have a better grade the next time when they try to pull this stuff. But we get an F minus the round one, I think. It was interesting. You walk into a store and there's 99 people with a mask on, and I'm the guy that, you know, I'm going to change my Chinese name to some dumb guy because I was the only guy without a mask. Okay, and so anyways, we the people are separate than a U.S. citizenship. Because anybody hear the Second Amendment? We have Second Amendment here. In California, I don't think they know what that means. The Second Amendment is a well-regulated militia being necessary to secure a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Shall not. Doesn't that kind of remind you of the Ten Commandments? It's mandatory language, shall not be infringed. Well, where did all these red flags laws come from? If it's mandatory language, and I'm a public servant, and I swear that I will uphold the Constitution of the United States and the state of Idaho, and then I sign the document, and then I sit there and pass red flag laws saying, well, you can do this and you can't do this. Okay, so nowhere in the Constitution does it say that U.S. citizens have the right to keep and bear arms. I just read it. It says the right of the people. Okay, when you read your Idaho state constitution, they have an awesome state constitution here. It says the inherent political power resides in the people, not in the U.S. citizenship. So we're getting duped. As soon as you hand over that ID, as soon as you sign the bottom of your tax return, what you're doing is you're waiving your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. And we see a lot of bad faith prosecutions happening in our country. And the first thing that they try to do is get you to waive your rights. And we need you to waive your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights. And so we got to quit waiving our rights. We got to start claiming our rights. So anyways, I have some packets over here. Some of the stuff I'm going to be sharing on it. There's a $20 donation. If you don't have the 20 bucks, take the packet. But I have the transgender affirmation remonstrance, which is a First Amendment action. And I'm impeaching a couple federal judges, happen to be here in Idaho. So people say, Tony, were you an attorney? I'll say, no, I'm better. Because I'm not a member of the bar. And you know what? It's the right of the people to exercise our political power. And so when we don't do that, then we're subjecting ourselves to these people as our rulers. And as a calling from God, I believe that I have a calling to confront illegitimate authorities. Someone's not going to come in and tell you how to run your household, right? But then again, when we go out in the public, we're subjected to a lot of these codes and statutes, which are not laws, and we're not going to put up with it anymore, right? So, amendment number 1. We'll do some Bill of Rights training to start it off here. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion nor prohibiting the free exercise thereof. So how many laws can Congress make concerning your exercise of religion? 0. So when they come to shut down their churches, did we have to shut down? No. Okay, there it is, no law. Okay, or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of the speech. Is there a law against hate speech? There's codes. It's called free speech. Okay, or the press, or the right of the people. Here we go again. It's not the right of the U.S. citizens. It's the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition government for redress of grievances. Petition the government. Is that singular or plural? That's plural. Okay? To petition the government. That means we have a right to go to our wonderful legislature and say, we the people are bringing this petition. And so that's what the remonstrance is. In California, what they were saying was Scott Wiener and Assemblywoman Lori Wilson, what they did was they said, we're going to pass this bill, transgender affirmation, AB 957, Assembly Bill 957. And what the bill says is if your 12-year-old son wants to chop his penis off and become a woman, and you don't affirm that action because you hold religious moral beliefs against him changing his sex, what we're going to come into your house and take your child. Does that sound like treason to you? Does that sound like violation of the oath of office? Yes, it is. They swore the oath. So in that document I put in there, I sent to them, you guys don't have statutory authority to pass an unconstitutional law. You guys are violating your oath of office. And so when you swear to do something as an oath, and then you do the opposite, what is that called when you violate your oath? Perjury. Felony perjury. So basically, I filed the transgender affirmation into the California state legislature and said, anybody voting for this is not fit for office. You cannot swear an oath to support the Constitution and then war against it at the same time. And so I sent 39 certified mails and put them on notice with a lawful notification letter, and the information is in there in the packet. And basically saying you can't even vote for this law. So they voted it, and the bill came over to Gavin Newsom's desk. And what his press release at the end of the day was, because I was getting ready to file the federal lawsuit, he vetoed the bill, believe it or not. Anyways, I don't think he wanted to be sued as an extremist, because I think his next move is he's going to jump in and run for president. Would anybody be surprised? I mean, who else do they have, right? Gavin's going to come up there because Joe Biden is literally falling asleep. So here are your rights. Here, I'm going to read some statements here. The state would have you to believe that they control every facet of your life. Public officials would have you to believe that they can create legislation and sign into law to take away and diminish your rights. If you know your rights, nobody has lawful authority to diminish them. Okay, some of these government officials are not content to function in their limited delegated authority given to them by the people, by us, right? They have subverted our thinking into believing that they can do as they will, and we must accept their every rule, guidance, regulation, ordinance, statute, code, policy, color of law, have an authority over our God-given rights. How many rights does the government give us? None. Okay, exactly. So the state only has authority on what they have created. And they have basically created artificial persons. All of your documents are in capital letters. If you pull out your driver's license, your social security card, your bank account, your credit cards, your birth certificates, it's all in capital letters. What does that mean? That means it's a corporation. Does Walmart have a right to keep and bear arms? Does the Walmart have a right to due process? No. Does the Walmart have freedom of speech? No. Corporations do not have God-given rights that are protected by the Constitution. They have privileges. And so in the 14th Amendment, it talks about privileges and immunities. So here we are, it's called the Reconstruction Act back in the 1867, I believe, or 1871. What happened was they, after the Civil War, they came in and started reorganizing the government, and they created the United States Corporation. And what that corporation does is creates U.S. citizenship. So when the state creates a corporation, it has jurisdiction over the state. The creator has jurisdiction over the creation. And so is there any creations of God here? Okay, we're creations of God. So God has jurisdiction over the man, but the state has jurisdiction over the person, not the people. Person is considered a corporation. And this is, like I said, the first time I heard this my mind went on tilt. And so they call that, did anybody ever hear of the fictional straw man? Right? That's your name in capital letters. That person is subjected to things. So I'm going to quote a verse out of the Bible. Jesus himself said this. He said, "Render unto Caesar what belongs to Caesar, but render unto God what belongs to God." Right? So we're creations of God, and yet we sit there and take that which is holy and precious, like our lives and our labor, and we sit there and surrender the stuff over to Caesar. Who created marriage? Where did marriage come from? I know they want to change the definition. In the California State's Constitution, it says it under Article 1, Section 7.5. Marriage is between a man and a woman. They actually put it on the ballot, and it got voted in, and actually went in to the Constitution. And so we're taking marriage, holy matrimony, which is a covenant between you, your spouse, and your God, and we take that and we go to Caesar and say, can we have permission to get married? And here's some money. And so when these two corporations merge, everything that corporation produces is all part of the corporate merger of our corporations, our persons. And then we give you jurisdiction over our kids. These people think they own your kids. And we've seen this with the movement. They said, we're coming back, we're coming after your children. And it seems like they have. And can a 12-year-old decide what he's going to have for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? Can he get a tattoo, buy cigarettes, drive a car? But yet they can cut his penis off, and they can do mastectomies on 12-year-olds, even if the parents don't think so. I mean, it's enough is enough. We got to stand up against this. We cannot put up with it any longer. And so knowledge is power. I was living in Pennsylvania out there in Union Township. And, these corporations, what they do is they lobby these politicians. And, that's an emoluments violation. If you use your political power office for advantage, profit, and unjust gain, that's called an emoluments violation. That's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. Is there any politicians that do that? Pick your poison. So basically, these local politicians, they basically had a company called Equitable Gas, okay? They're the largest fracking company in the United States. And what they're doing is they start fracking in residential areas. So they lobby the township and said, hey, we're going to need you to change your zoning laws. So what they do is they lock everybody out of the building, bring in the attorneys, change the zoning laws to where they can start fracking. And so my sister just happened to live on the road where they need to drive up the water trucks to water to cool off their thing. And I'm all for natural energy. I'm not against it. But so eminent domain, which is under the Fifth Amendment, when you take that which is private and use it for the public, you have to use just compensation. And so they wanted to take a quarter acre of her property there. And so the county supervisors decided, oh, we're going to take a quarter acre of your property. Meanwhile, one of the supervisors lived next door to her and voted against taking her property, okay, in which she had horses on. And so what they were trying to do is kick her out of the house because there's natural gas on it and they wanted the right of way. And they figured, well, we're just going to steamroll this person. And so she gives me a call, and so we put them on notice. We did lawful notification letters. It's in the packet. We're going to take a break and allow people to grab a packet here, probably in about half hour, 40 minutes. So we put them on notice and we sent them 3 notifications. If you continue to do this without just cause, we're going to file a federal lawsuit. They tried throwing her off the property. They said, you're having septic problems, and it was totally checked out. So what we ended up doing was filing a federal lawsuit. And a year and a half later, we removed 4 out of those 5 supervisors in Union Township, okay, without any attorneys. And so what we did was drained our local swamp. This is what we need to do. We need to come together. And so she invited me. I was in California, and she's like, hey, come and do a town hall meeting. So got together in a barn in a local area, and there was probably about the same amount of people in here. And I just decided to start doing the Bill of Rights training. And I was explaining the Bill of Rights, what the rights of the people are. Then I did a survey. I said, how many people here in this township are having their rights violated by their supervisors? People started putting their hands up. So I said, well, why don't you come up and give us a 2-minute version? So everybody started coming up and saying that they're doing this and they're doing this. We had a bunch of tyrants. So we decided to start showing up every Wednesday at their public meetings and voicing our opinions and telling them, you guys can't be doing this. And we filed the federal lawsuit, and then we also filed emoluments violations and had them audited in the executive branch. And this is the thing. When you try to hire these attorneys and do a civil rights lawsuit, they want like $25,000 to $30,000 to start. It's like, we're not all going to refinance our heart and soul and put our properties up to refinance it to file a federal lawsuit. So I've created a program, okay? Level on the battlefield. We need to start filing federal lawsuits against these public officials and putting their names up in lights. And so what I'm doing is managing about 15 federal lawsuits all across the country, closely 9 of them. 6 of them kind of went off on their own. I got them up and running. And during the COVID engineer, the scamdemic, whatever you want to call it, there was a group of people in Allegheny County, Pennsylvania that all got fired for refusing to get the vaccine. Was it a vaccine? Absolutely not. I think Judy Michael Bitts, she's coming in a couple of weeks. She'll explain that to you when you come back. But basically, it's an mRNA gene therapy treatment. It never was a vaccination, so it's misrepresentation to the people. We weren't given informed consent, and we're watching our loved ones get sick and fall over, and I've watched 8 of my friends drop dead from getting the vaccine and the booster. So enough is enough. We're waking up. We're not going to put up with this stuff anyways. But getting back into Union Township, what happened in Union Township was we filed the federal lawsuit and we shut down the road that she lived on for a year. The Department of Transportation couldn't even do it. So when you get subpoena power in the federal lawsuit, you get to perform what I call paper colonoscopies, right? We got emails, text messages, saying a bunch of stuff that people were embarrassed about. And then you get to go and grab them and put their butts in the seat. And then you get to do depositions and keep them there for 7.5 hours and questioning them. Because when you go into your supervisor meetings, guess what? They don't answer questions. You make your public comments and then you leave. So, before we did that, but then we put them on notice and saying, you guys are violating the law. Ignorance of the law is no excuse. So one step further than that is to, once you're explained the law that you're violating to it, then it's called deliberate indifference. And so, a lot of public officials, they want to act as if they have qualified immunity. Well, you can't sue me. I have qualified immunity. Qualified immunity is kind of like qualifying for a loan. You either qualify it or you don't. So when you deliberately violate the law, especially after you're getting certified mail from your constituents saying you're violating the Bill of Rights, and then they still continue to act and try to pass legislation that violates your rights, now you have a cause of action. And it's the best $400 you ever spent is to file a federal lawsuit. So let's do some Bill of Rights training here. Fourth Amendment. It's the right of the people again. Does it say persons? No, the right of the people to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects against unreasonable searches and seizures. Reminds me of a story. I was driving in Modesto, California, and this is how blatantly ignorant and corrupt our courts is. So I'm gonna boil it down to the most easiest thing, traffic court, okay? And this is where you want to test your rights because you're not going to get thrown in jail for fighting a traffic ticket. So if you want to start testing this information, go to your local court, and then you can really expose how corrupt it is. So I'm traveling down the road, and I'm on my phone, and I see two officers up ahead of me, a few hundred yards. So I go to put my phone down, and it slides in between my seat. So normally when I get pulled over, I record. And so I'm looking at my speed limit, and I'm driving by these two officers, and I'm going by. And all of a sudden, I look at my rearview mirror. Here comes the lights. I'm like, okay, this should be good. So I pull over, and I crack the window down about halfway, and the officer comes over and says, can I have your license, registration, and proof of insurance? And I said, sure, officer. Can you let me know why you're pulling me over? And it was almost like autopilot, like, you know what I mean? Programming. She said, I need your license, registration, and proof insurance. I said, can you please, officer, let me know why you're pulling me over? License, registration, proof of insurance. I would like to know why I'm being pulled over. Sir, give me your keys. Okay, it's escalating, right? So we gotta remain in honor, right? They're trying to do their job. If they're not educated, we need to do what's right for us. And I don't have a cookie cutter solution. I kind of do everything kind of when it hits. But, I decided to make a stand that day. And I says, my keys are protected under the Fourth Amendment. Those are my personal effects, right? We have a right to be secure in our person and our personal effects. And then she says, sir, get out of the car. I says, well, I can't do that either. I have a right to be secure in my person, and I don't feel secure getting outside the car, right? And she goes, so then she calls backup, and here comes backup. And so I asked for a supervisor. So they come back up. They're like, sir, we're going to bust your window out and drag you out if you don't give me your license, registration, proof of insurance. Okay, license, registration, proof of insurance. She comes back and says, you did not have your headlights on. It's at 11 a.m. and there's fog here. I says, there's fog? I says, I don't see any fog. She goes, well, there was fog when I pulled you over. I'm okay. So she gives me the ticket and goes on the way. And I'm like, okay, $400 for that. And this is like in 2012. This is what got me started, okay? Something like a bad faith prosecution. So I go in to fight the traffic ticket, and I go in with my paperwork, and I go to the clerks. Okay, here we are, due process. We're one of the people minding my own business. I was supposed to have my headlights on in the fog, but it wasn't fog, so they decided to raise some revenue during the recession. So I go down to the clerk, and I went and put my paperwork before the clerk, and I says, I want to file this paperwork. I'm fighting my ticket, number, blah, blah, blah. And the clerk goes to me, well, that'll be $180. I said, no, thank you. Here's my paperwork. She goes, we're not filing that paperwork until you give me $180. And I like to carry my little notepad and my pen. I says, can I have your name and official job title, please? I ain't giving you my name. Okay, can I have your employee identification number? Being real kind. I ain't giving you that either. What do you need that for? I says, well, I'm going to pull your oath of office. And then she looked puzzled to me. She goes, well, what's an oath of office? I says, you don't know what an oath of office is? Well, it says, we got two options here. If you don't have an oath of office, you're impersonating a public official, which is a felony. And if you do have an oath of office and you're not allowing me to file my documents, now you're violating my due process rights under the Fifth Amendment, which is felony perjury of your oath of office. So I'm going to need to know what felony to charge you with. That's why I need your name. Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Pellegrino. It turned from attitude, the atmosphere changed. Let me get my supervisor. The supervisor comes over here. Can I help you, sir? I go, can I have your name and official job title? All over again. I mean, everybody's on autopilot, drones, okay? Mindless robots. You're not getting my name. Can I have your employee identification number? What do you need that for? Because I'm going to pull your oath of office. What is an oath of office? I'm like, you got to be kidding me here. Now the bailiff comes over, really nice guy, great guy. He comes over, can I have a word with you, sir? Because I'm holding the line up, right? That's what I do. So Officer Baker takes me back there and he goes, what seems to be the problem, sir? I says, you know what? I want everybody to obey the law. That's the problem. I'm traveling down the road and my day's interrupted because I allegedly am driving in the fog without my headlights on for a $400 ticket, and I'm fighting my ticket, and the clerk is not taking my paperwork, and she doesn't know if she has an oath of office. I go, you have an oath of office, right? He goes, no, I don't have an oath of office. I'm just a bailiff. I'm like, you got to be kidding me, Mr. Baker. I go, you have a gun, you have taser, you have mace. You have to have an oath of office. He goes, oh, well, I don't know anything about that. I says, well, this is what I'm going to do. You're my witness. I'm filing this paperwork or you're going to arrest me. And we're all going to be in federal court. So I went over there. Here's my paperwork. Guess what I did that day? I changed policy because I said no. I says, I'm not paying your fee and I'm doing this. And we got to be careful when we're going to make our stands. Okay, so I've softened up a little bit. A lot of times if it's not going to benefit for me, I'll consent to it. Okay, I consent to traveling through the crosswalk at an elementary school doing 15 miles an hour because it's okay. It's a good thing to consent to good things. But when your rights are violated, like due process, I'm not going to consent to that. So I filed my paperwork and then I decided to go and fight my ticket. So this is the lowest, easiest form of way to address your government to see if they're constitutional. So we're all standing in line like cattle next to a barbed wire fence in the yellow line, and they funnel us in there, and it's almost like the deli line. We're taking a ticket, you know, and I got our number, and then they call us in by our numbers, and we all funnel in like a couple hundred people into the courtroom for our arraignment, right? Okay. So I go in, and they call my name, call me up, and they want to plea, and I says, Your Honor, I have a question for you. I says, did I commit a crime? And the judge goes, yes, you did. I said, okay, if I committed a crime, then who would be the injured party? Okay, and the judge was dumb enough to say the state. I said, the state? She goes, yes, the state of California. I says, okay. I said, Your Honor, is this a state court or a federal court? She goes, well, this is a state court. I says, well, I'm going to have to motion to dismiss because that's the conflict of interest. If the state's the injured party, then, you know, we're going to have to go to a federal court. So I'm going to have to ask you to dismiss this case. And I says, can you dismiss it? And she goes, no. And I says, well, what lawful reason are you denying me my motion to dismiss? And she basically says, because I can. Okay. Later on, when she asked me why I was suing her, guess what I said? Because I can. So I sued Judge Meredith in Stanislaus County in federal lawsuit. And I'll tell you later, and I'm going to break down the Bill of Rights in this. So I'm going somewhere with the story. So anyways, so she denied my motion and then she set me for trial. So I had to go back in there again. So I went through the thing again, stood in line like cattle. You know, they had us wrapped around the building. You know, we just marched in like sheep, took our deli number, funneled in, and I ended up sitting right where the judge comes in. My wife at the time sitting next to me, and we're waiting for Judge Meredith to come out. And I noticed some religious people sitting behind me, and I think they were really important religious men because they had very big turbans, okay? And so what they were doing was exercising their religious rights. So there's a thing called rules, codes, statutes, ordinances. Those are not laws, like guidance documents that they use during COVID. Those are guidance. They're not to have mandatory language. They're not lawful orders. But when you're in court, you take your hat off and you stand to be sworn in. The key is to be sworn in. So I noticed it. So spontaneously, I'm thinking they're exercising their religious rights. So it was like, all rise for the Honorable Lynn Meredith presiding. Please remain standing with your right hand. And everybody stands up, and I'm sitting down smiling with my hand up like this. And Judge Meredith comes walking in, and she sees Pellegrino, who made a fool out of her in front of everybody the last time I was in there, okay? So she goes to Mr. Baker, the really gentleman, really nice guy, bailiff. She goes, make Mr. Pellegrino stand. So he comes over to me and goes, Mr. Pellegrino, I'm going to need you to stand to be sworn in. And I said really loud, I says, I only bow and rise before my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. I says, this is constitutionally protected under the First Amendment, my free exercise of religion. And I turn around and look at the guys wearing the turbans going, hello, me too. You didn't have to take your hats off. So then she snarled like a dog. And then she called the bailiff by his first name, Chris, make him rise. And now he's shaken because he already encountered me earlier. He's like, Mr. Pellegrino, I'm going to need you to rise. And I says, Miller versus U.S., the exercise of a constitutional right cannot be turned into a crime. And there is no titles of nobility given to those who are in public service. That's Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. So now she says, remove him. And you could have heard the pin drop. And then my wife at the time standing next to me going, get up. And she could crack walnuts with her butt cheeks. And she's like, maybe that's why I'm not married now. But anyways, so they removed me. And so I'm going to explain the Bill of Rights as how it played out there within that 45 seconds. First Amendment, right? My right to free exercise of religion. They exercised their religion. There was discrimination, exercise the First Amendment. Under 18 U.S.C. 3571, it's $250,000 every time the Bill of Rights is violated. So it looks like we have my generation here today. Anybody under 40 in here? By the way, maybe one person. We got Ben in here. Anyways, by the way, tip your waiters and waitresses good tonight. So, it's $250,000 per violation, and your rights are kind of like Lay's potato chips when they get violated because you just can't have one, right? So they violated my free exercise of religion. They came and illegally seized me for exercising constitutionally protected conduct. So that's the First Amendment. Fourth Amendment, they violated my right to life, liberty, or property without due process of law. They restricted me and restrained me and violated my liberty. That's the Fifth Amendment. That's 3. And she violated her oath of office. 4. So that was $1 million in damages in 45 seconds. And so when I sued her and I started the discovery process, one of the reasons why I found out that they didn't know their oath of office is guess what they did? Anybody buy a house? Anybody get hired on a job? What do? They hand you a stack of papers and okay, I'm going to sign it. I'm going to sign it. I'm going to sign it. Everybody at that traffic court signed their oath of office. Nobody swore in. Guess what that creates? Everybody vacated their official job title. They were not going to let me win that case. You imagine how many millions of dollars they had to give back, everything they rubber stamped, and every fine they collected. So there's 5 elements to the oath of office. Okay, you got to be sworn in by the proper administrator. Okay, you have to repeat the oath by swearing and affirming. You have to sign the oath, then it's filed on the public record, and then you have to write prescribed by law in California. It's 10 days, and then you could start your job. It turns out that they didn't do all 5 of those elements, so literally they vacated their official job capacity. So it's either you have an oath and you violated it through felony perjury, or your oath is in default. So I'm going to read the California oath here, and it's pretty similar to Idaho. It's, I do solemnly swear, okay, they're making it very personal here, that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Do we have any domestic enemies in this country? Is Brad Little, was he a domestic enemy, by the way? I think he is. That I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, that I will and faithfully discharge the duties that I am about to enter. And then they sign their name and go through the process. So that's the first thing you do is when you encounter public officials, you ask the questions because you have a right to remain silent. Anybody know which one that is? That's the Fifth Amendment, right? So getting back to the corporation, this is the pecking order, right? So you need to know two things: jurisdiction and your status. And that's what we're going to give a people opportunity to change their status. We have a notary here and we have a template. And I'm going to share that in a minute. So status and jurisdiction, who am I and how does the law apply to me? When you're over in your United States citizen status, there's nothing in the law that gives you rights. It's all privileges and immunities. Privileges, you have to ask permission to marry your wife, right? You have to ask permission to drive down the road, to travel. You have to ask permission to marry your spouse. We've all done this, okay? So it's time that, we understand who we are and how the law applies to us. And so under common law, under God's jurisdiction, the definition of a crime is to have an injured party, okay? And another right that the people have is unlimited right to contract. You don't need a contractor's license unless you're doing commercial work. If I'm going to do some electrical work and plumbing down in Walmart, the public meets in there, and I'm going to go in there and say, hey, I'm going to do your electrical work, and the public's here, and I'm licensed by the state. I'm going to make sure that when people come in here, they're protected. That's called in the public. We have the right to individual contract, and it's no such thing as working under the table. How many of us got cash, and at the end of the year, we're like putting that on our taxes? We want to be good Christians, and we want to, right? We're thinking we're doing the right thing, and, we're giving our lives what belongs to God, and we're giving it to Caesar. Who gives you your life? Your government? That 8 hours that you put in today? Who gave you the strength to do that? The government didn't give you to do that. That is your labor. That is not income. If I create this glass and I make 1 million of these glasses and I make $2 off of each glass, now that's income. That's taxable income. We've been voluntarily asking permission, voluntarily paying taxes. And like I said, when you sign your tax return at the bottom, you're basically waiving your Fourth and Fifth Amendment rights there and consenting to that contract. So we have this, so what I call is live above the line. And basically the line is the oath of office. So it's God, we the people, the Constitution, the oath of office, and then the public servants who support and defend the Constitution, which is your rights. For some reason, they want the U.S. citizen all the way down underneath their feet because they think that they're our bosses. And so the people who take this oath of office are politicians, military, judges, lawyers, public school teachers in California used to take that, law enforcement, state workers. It's interesting. I have a template also in the packet where anybody ever get audited by the IRS? Don't raise your hand. Maybe they're here. Or is anybody from the FBI here today? So anyways, the IRS, I have a one-page template. And this is what you do. Instead of create controversy, what you do is say, thank you, IRS, for coming in and interrupting my day and wanting to do an audit on you. I'm so looking forward to do an audit with you. Can you please provide me a few things before we get started? I'm going to need your employee identification number, and I'm going to need your oath of office. Okay, and then as soon as you send me the oath of office, then I'll be happy to get started. Guess what happens when you send them that letter? Nothing. Then they call up. So a friend of mine that used to make fun, oh, you sovereign citizen, pay your taxes, do this, do that. You're always causing trouble, Tony. He gets audited, then he calls me up. Hey, still got that IRS template? I'm like, yeah, what's going on? He's like, well, they're asking for $15,000. I don't think I owe it. He goes, can I try out one of your things? And I said, yeah. So I gave him the template. He mailed it in. They call him. We don't have to give you the oath of office, blah, 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 blah. And what they do is they bluff. Okay, it's like a poker game. You gotta just hold them, right? So he says, no, we're not moving forward until you get your oath of office. I'll wait until you send it. So then they call him back and go, hey, this is what we're going to do. When they want to do you a favor, that's when you got to watch out, government. They said to him, if you want to just pay us $500, we'll call it good. I said, wow, well, see, it worked. That was good. What'd you do? He goes, well, I figured it either works or not. I told him they're not giving me a nickel. So guess how much he paid? Zero, okay? So this is the whole thing. Individual rights, right? So when individuals work for the government, you don't sue the IRS, don't sue the police department, don't sue these big bureaucratic organizations, the CPS workers. Who takes the oath? The organization doesn't take the oath. The individual takes the oath. And so when you send the lawful notification letters to the individual saying, look, you violated my rights, I'm going to need a copy of your oath of office. And that's another thing, too, that we're finding out that these CPS workers do not have an oath of office. I call that impersonating a public official. But they're going to come in and try to exercise a right over your kids. So basically, when you live below the line and become their servants, you're surrendering all your rights and you're getting privileges and immunities. So before I jump into the next subject, what I want to do is, the first time I heard all this stuff, my mind went tilt. Wait a minute. I'm one of we the people. I'm a U.S. citizen. I voluntarily pay taxes. I voluntarily consent to unconstitutional things. I have to ask permission. How do I have rights? So we have a Supreme Court ruling. It's Hale versus Hinkle. Supreme Court ruling says there's a distinction between the natural person and the corporation. So the Supreme Court even recognizes it. In Black's law, there's an artificial person and there's the natural person. And if you want to change your status, we can do that and have it notarized where you're basically saying those things. So can you come up and explain Hale versus Hinkle real quick? This is Kirk's Pendergrass from Kirk's Law Corner.
It's Hale versus Hinkle here. Section 74 of the opinion. Now this is an if. Whenever an officer or employee of a corporation were summoned before a grand jury as a witness, he could refuse to produce the books and documents of such corporation upon the ground that they would incriminate the corporation itself. It would result in the failure of a large number of cases where the illegal combination was determinable only upon the examination of such papers. Conceding that the witness was an officer of the corporation under investigation and that he was entitled to assert the rights of corporation with respect to the production of its books and papers. So this is kind of in reference to the Fourth Amendment here. We are of the opinion that there is a clear distinction in this particular between an individual and a corporation, and that the latter, the corporation, has no right to refuse to submit its books and papers for an examination at the suit of the state. So there's a little key piece there to understand about corporations and how the corporations are fictions. They don't have rights. They have privileges. The individual now may stand upon his constitutional rights as a citizen. Now, I don't particularly like the verbiage there because we actually have rights that are natural rights that belong to man. It has nothing to do with being a citizen, but all intents and purposes, let's go with the verbiage that's here. He is entitled to carry on his private business in his own way. His power to contract is unlimited. Now listen carefully. He owes no duty to the state or to his neighbors to divulge his business or to open his doors to an investigation so far as it may tend to incriminate him. He owes no such duty to the state, since he receives nothing therefrom beyond the protection of his life and property. His rights are such as existed by the law of the land, long antecedent to the organization of the state, and can only be taken from him by due process of law, which due process of law is synonymous with law of the land. So that means from the Constitution, not any kind of a statute, a regulation, city ordinance, or anything like that. It must be done by the law of the land. This is why it's so important to read your state constitution and the federal constitution. Let's see. Among his rights are a refusal to incriminate himself and the immunity of himself and his property from arrest or seizure except under a warrant of the law. Not warrant of statute, not warrant of code. He owes nothing to the public so long as he does not trespass upon their rights. Now, upon the other hand, the corporation is a creature of the state, meaning a creation. It is presumed to be incorporated for the benefit of the public. It receives certain special privileges and franchises and holds them subject to the laws of the state and the limitations of its charter. Its powers are limited by law. That's them statutes. It can make no contract not authorized by its charter. Its rights to act as a corporation are only preserved to it so long as it obeys the laws of its creation. See, statutes create the corporation and regulate the corporation. That's what statutes are for. In fact, that's in Idaho Code, Title 9, Evidence 303, difference between public statutes and private statutes. Public statutes are for creating and affecting corporations. So, are you a corporation? Then none of the statutes apply to us, which that's another rabbit hole for a later day. But there's another part here. There is a reserved right in the legislature to investigate its contracts and find out whether it has exceeded its powers. Does anybody know what that reserved right in the legislature is? Nobody? Article 1, Section 10, Idaho Constitution, Declaration of Rights. The right of the people to peaceably assemble, to consult for our common good, to instruct our representatives, and to petition the legislature for the redress of grievances. Back to those special privileges, that's Article 1, Section 2. All political powers inherent in the people. We have the right to alter, reform, or abolish anything at any time we deem it necessary. And no special privileges or immunities shall ever be granted that it cannot be altered or revoked by the legislature. The legislature is where the real power is at, folks, where we, the people, instruct our representatives. See, we're supposed to be the masters. They're the servants. The legislature is the one that has the power to do investigations, to revoke their business license. This is due process of law. This is the process that is due to corporations. So it depends on who the party is, what the process is. And the law of the land, or our rights, the common law, dictates this process. So this is why it's so important to actually read bills of rights, declarations of rights, your state constitutions, and the federal constitution, but more specifically, our state constitution. It's so important to read that stuff because that is the real law. All the other stuff is not law. That's all policy, bylaws of a corporation. It's not supposed to apply to the people. People are in the private. Just like Hale versus Henkel says right there. We have no duty to the state or even to our neighbors at all. It's none of their business. Our right to carry on our private business is a fundamental right, secured by the Fourth Amendment. Plain and simple. We have the right to be secure.
Challenged in the Supreme Court, I think 2,000 times. It's never been overturned. And so they distinctly say there's a corporation and there's a natural person. It's like, so now that we are aware of our rights, why do we just keep on consenting? I have faith in a strong proponent of marriage, and I believe that's a covenant. So there's 3 C's in life that we're all going to have. We're going to have covenants, which is a solemn oath between man and God. We're going to have contracts between us, other people, and government. And then we're going to have consensual encounters. Everything that happened under COVID was consensual. We consented. Because if you stood your ground, and when they said you can't go visit your dying mother or your dying aunt and uncle in the hospital what you say is, yes, I will. I'm not leaving, call the police because I'm going to file a complaint. And when people would call me, I'm at the hospital, they won't let me visit my wife. I says, tell them that you're not leaving, you're going to file a police report to let them let you in. What they were doing was, when they were shoving ventilators on people and then giving them remdesivir, shut down their kidneys and murder people, and they turned our hospitals into prisons, we all thought that it was the law. And we didn't stand up because we didn't know. Even the Bible says, my people perish because of lack of knowledge. And so this is what I'm here. I think it's ridiculous that I had to come 800 miles to come talk about us exercising our rights. But we need to do this because the tyranny, I mean, we're sick of it. We're going to take our power back, right? We got to do it. So this is what we're doing. That's why this information, you might not get it the first time, but that's why I have the packets there. And we are not going to consent anymore. I don't give up a blade of grass unless it's beneficial to me. So so a lot of people, they didn't shut down. There was a handful of businesses, and it's turning out that these people that are taking a stand win. I was in court another time, and it's interesting how boldness is contagious. When one person stands up, other people feel empowered by it. So I went in to support another guy who was learning with me. He decided to fight another bogus traffic ticket. And what he did was, I was coming in late, so I had my baseball cap in, and I went running into traffic court, and I sat down, and the bailiff comes over. And you know, I am not anti-law enforcement. I am not pro-law enforcement. You know what I am? I'm going to honor the people that honor their oath of office. They're always trying to create division. Well, we have the police department. We have these people, honor this people, divide and conquer. We're going to label you gay, straight, black, white, vaxxed, unvaxxed, man, woman, illegal alien, citizen. When they arrested that illegal alien that had a gun and they took it to the Supreme Court, everybody was upset as, why didn't this guy get charged for having a gun on him? Was he a U.S. citizen? So what did that make him? But he was a man. Men have a right to keep and bear arms. So that's why we wonder why these rulings happen. The Supreme Court is starting to shift. We're seeing a lot of good things. But getting back to this other traffic court story. So I ran into traffic court. I'm late. I sit down. The bailiff comes over to me. Get that hat off. And I try to, I try not to cause problems. If I get deplaned off a airline, it wasn't because I wanted to get off first. No, I'm just kidding. That's the good part about that. I got off first without waiting to get off. So I went to take my hat off, and this guy's screaming at me in front of everybody. I says, I'm thinking, I didn't like the way he asked me. I says, is that a lawful order, sir? And then he goes, you, outside. Everybody in the courtroom's going, ooh, big shot, open up your mouth. We go outside. He's there, what's your problem? I go, you know what my problem is? I don't have your name. I don't have your good faith surety bond. I don't have your oath of office. I don't have your supervisor's name, his badge number, and his oath of office, and his good faith surety bond. And I'm not answering another question until I get all that, because if you violate my rights, you're going to be a primary defendant in a federal lawsuit. Do I make myself clear? Long pause. Well, it's just about respect. I said, I've never seen respect in this courtroom ever, and I'm here a lot. I says, are you arresting me? And we're on cameras. We're inside the courthouse. You don't do this in Stockton, California at 2 a.m, by the way. You do not exercise your rights, okay? You got to be smart. We got to use wisdom, right? In all things. So there's cameras on me. I feel safe. So I go back in. I'm wearing a shirt. The front said independent civil rights investigator, and on the back it said rights upheld. This guy walked behind me and read rights upheld on my back in my t-shirt back in there, and I had a Steeler cap on, and I figured he must have been a Cowboys fan or something because, he wanted me to take it off. So I went back in there with my hat on and sat down, and he walked back in like all quiet. Now the atmosphere changes in that place. You know why? Somebody stood up and they're thinking, wow, he has rights. He told that guy, no, I don't consent. I'm not taking my hat off. Did I get arrested? No. And so I'm not telling everybody to do this because I got on an airplane with my status affidavit without no picture ID. That's a whole nother story. I'm an asshole magnet. These people come out of nowhere against me all the time. Seriously. And so, you can't get arrested unlawfully, and lots of people do that. And so when I sat down, the atmosphere changed in that, and all of a sudden they called the next guy up, and he's mad. So he's like, wow, we have rights. So he goes up, they call his name, and he put his paperwork on the counter to the judge and goes, 36 miles an hour in a 35-mile-an-hour zone? Judge, is this for real? Okay, he felt empowered. That's why we need to stand up, and that's why he who leaves the field of battle first loses. Sometimes we go into these courts and they rule against us, okay? A lot of these judges, they don't even know the Constitution. Has anybody ever heard of Fred Kelly Grant? He was in this region. One of my mentors, an attorney for 50-some years. So he started the Coordination Institute, and Rebecca Mercer gave us $250,000 per quarter to start using this process against government overreach, okay? And so he's my mentor. So we flew out to Wisconsin, and Judge Gableman, he was the president of the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin, and he's the president judge, and he just retired. So we're trying to recruit him to get on our board for coordination. By the way, coordination could be used against this wind turbine crisis we got, the water crisis with the farmers. This is a process that works, and I'm going to share about that tomorrow. Maybe I'll share about it a little bit today if we have time. So my mentor, this is what a good mentor does. He puts you in the fire and tests you. So he's introducing me to the Supreme Court of the state of Wisconsin, Judge Gableman. And while I'm shaking his hand, he's like, yeah, Justice Gableman, this is my personal assistant, Tony Pellegrino. And he has a very low opinion of the judiciary. I'm like, great. So Justice Gableman goes, oh, is that right, Tony? Why is that? I says, well, Justice, I really believe a lot of judges don't know the Constitution. And he goes, well, let me tell you a story, Fred, with his Wisconsin accent. My colleague and I, we went to this constitutional convention, and there was about 400 of us judges there. And I said to my colleague, how many of these judges here you think knows the Constitution? And my colleague says, oh, probably 5%. And I probably said, probably less. And we both laughed. So Tony's right. So I had a Supreme Court justice agree with me when my mentor's trying to, he's trying to school me and test me. And so what happens when a judge don't know the Constitution? Well, then you file paperwork, like Kirk said. You file a petition of redress and grievance into the legislature, and that's the court. Do you remember Kavanaugh when he was trying to be stopped becoming a Supreme Court justice? Do we remember that? So did not a citizen have an accusation against this man? What was her name? Ford? She said, this man raped me 35 years ago. I don't remember when it happened or what the date was. I didn't have any witnesses. And so she went to the Senate and says, I'm going to stop this man from being confirmed. So that's a type of remonstrance. You go into the legislative body, and what you do is you stop either a bill or you stop somebody from taking office. And so guess who the jury was? It was the Senate. And they brought forth their evidence and their testimony, and they all voted, and they voted, we believe this guy's innocent. So anyways, we need to, and like I said, I have examples of what a remonstrance looks like. It was some hours. And so what I'd like to do is make myself available to the people who want to stand up, and you can contact me later. My business cards are over there. We have a lot of capable people on our team that could be assistants of counsel. So the Bill of Rights says you have a right in the Sixth Amendment to assistance of counsel. Guess when that was written? Before the Bar Association. This is the problem. If attorneys and politicians have destroyed this country, why do we think they're going to fix it? They're not going to do it. So I didn't know anything when I started this. I started standing up. So when we start taking steps and put our John Hancock on these documents, we're committing ourselves. We're pledging our lives, fortunes, and sacred honor. And I think the children of this nation are worth us standing up, because it's getting disgusting. It really is. And so, real quick, when your school teacher says that the boys can go shower with the girls, is your 14 daughter secure in her person under the Fourth Amendment with a 17-year-old boy in her locker room? So what do? Doesn't the superintendent, the elected official of that school district, say, I do solemnly swear? They swear the oath. You sue on behalf of your daughter, your superintendent, because they swore the oath. Why are they getting away with this? Nobody's standing up. So questions.
First question for you, sir. Can we sue Walgreens and Albertsons for advertising the COVID mRNA shots when we already know they are injuring people?
I believe you can. What it is, it's called misrepresentation and fraud. They sit there and they called this thing a vaccination, and then they tried to backpedal and change the name of what the definition of what a vaccine is. Who has the power to change definitions? It's the legislature. Did the legislature change the definition of vaccine? No, they didn't. The CDC does not have authority to change the definition of a vaccination. A vaccination provides immunity, so the COVID vaccine shot did not provide any immunity. It was an mRNA gene therapy, emergency authorized only experimental treatment. So yes, I believe there was a cause of action. This isn't legal advice, but educationally speaking, that's fraud and misrepresentation. In the lawsuit against Allegheny County, the people who got fired for refusing to get the vaccine, which is the injection, they are in federal court. 24 federal lawsuits are in Western Pennsylvania over that exact issue.
All right, can you explain what's going on with this affidavit and why we have a notary here again?
Okay, the affidavit of status. An affidavit unrebutted in a court of law stands as truth, meaning if I make a claim and I have it notarized and I swear that it's the truth, it stands as truth on the record if you're in court. And so unless somebody can rebut that affidavit, can anybody rebut that you're a creation of God? And so I'm going to go into explaining that, and Tammy has to leave here in about 20 minutes. And so what it is what you'll do is you're claiming that I am a natural person and not an artificial person unless I choose to consent. And so that's a sworn affidavit, and you sign that, and then it gets notarized. And then what you'll do is take that and file it at the county recorder's office.
Is there a way to file lawsuits against the corrupt state officials who helped with the 2020 election fraud?
There are several lawsuits. One of my clients who I'm consulting with, they wrote a book called The Parallel Election, and they sued officials in Pennsylvania over election fraud, and they basically got retaliated against and was being sued for defamation, right? And Exhibit 1 against defamation was the book, okay? So there was election fraud, and yes, we could sue them. But Mark, what the issue is, it's not a conventional lawsuit. Because remember I talked about creation has jurisdiction over, the creator has jurisdiction over the creation, right? Did God create you? He has jurisdiction over you. Who created the election laws? The legislature. So the answer is you don't take your lawsuit for election fraud to the judiciary branch. You take it in the legislature. It's a First Amendment, your right to petition, address, and remonstrance as one of the people. So this is the deal. Listen up. Can lawyers file a remonstrance? No. It has to be you guys. It's the right of the people to petition, address, and remonstrance their government. So it has to come from you. So you can file a lawsuit, except for it's going to be like a regular lawsuit, but on the cover page, it's going to be to your state legislature. And we're filing one in Pennsylvania. So if anybody wants my copy of the lawsuit against the state of Pennsylvania against the vaccinations, email me at acla@yahoo.com, and I'll send you a copy of that so you can have a template.
All right, next question. If that illegal alien with the gun was a terrorist, how can he have the right to have a gun when federal laws require background checks?
That's the whole thing. These federal laws are against persons. And what the laws are is basically it's illegal to carry a firearm, okay, And so what they do is they, instead of the Second Amendment, it says your right to keep and bear arms. Okay. The U.S. citizens do not have a right to keep and bear arms. It's the right of the people. This man was a people. Was he a creation of God? Okay. So what it was he committed a crime when he came into this country. It wasn't about keeping and bearing arms, but that's all up to interpretation. Kirk, what's your take on that question? Do you want to chime in on that?
All right, so there's a recent case, New York State Rifle Pistol Association versus Bruin, June of 2022. Things have changed. Going back to common law, the laws of nature, and the Supreme Court has changed the standard of review from the old bar way back to the common law way, which is called, right, text and history of the right. The Supreme Court went all the way back, and they've specifically said that they do not care about any statutes from history. They don't care about any case law from history. They want the actual text as it is written in the history of law. Supreme Court went all the way back to Blackstone's commentaries on the law of England, citing the laws of nature. There's three primary absolute rights from the laws of nature. The very first one is personal security. Now, that also includes your health, free will, free choice, but it also includes the right of self-defense. Now, this is what the Supreme Court has cited to support the Second Amendment, and has now been the primary case that every other case, the Rahimi case, which is out of the Fifth Circuit from Texas, they put that case on hold pending the outcome of the Bruin case. Now, the Ninth Circuit just ruled May 9th. Unlawful, unconstitutional legislation, right? Any legislation, this is also Miranda versus Arizona, shall be no rulemaking or legislation that abrogates the right. Okay, so this right comes from the laws of nature. Fundamentally and principally, man has the right to defend himself. So this man, doesn't matter where, in this nation called America, we recognize the laws of nature, fundamentally and principally. So every man has the right to keep and bear arms for self-defense, fundamentally and principally. Doesn't matter what it's about. Read the Rahimi case. Holy smokes, if there's ever a man that should not have the right to keep and bear arms, this guy is a perfect example of somebody who shouldn't. But they said, nope, he has the right to keep and bear arms. So every man, because we are creations of God. So this is the laws of nature that the Declaration of Independence refers to assume the powers of the earth, the laws of nature, and nature's God. That's that right of life. That's the first primary one. The right of liberty. The second one is the right of personal liberty, which consists in the power of locomotion, of changing situations. That defeats the driver's license. The third one is the right of private property, the right to acquire, possess, and utilize your private property how you see fit. Hale versus Henkel. Okay, these are the three primary absolute rights from the laws of nature as the fundamental law. It comes before the Constitution. The Declaration of Independence specifically states that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, receiving their just powers under the consent of the governed. That's the intent of instituting government, is to secure those rights.
If you own a corporation and it carries through to your personal income tax return, how do you avoid signing your rights away if you sign the dotted line on the IRS tax return? How do you keep corporate income separate from signing your rights away as a personal, as a people?
Is this a private business, or is this open to the public? Is it like
They're publicly used.
so you're open to the public, so you have people from the public coming in, like a grocery store or something like that?
I have a store, I have apartments. So they're both.
So when you're open to the public, you're subject to certain statutes and laws like handicap, right? Do you have a handicap restroom?
Yes.
Okay, so under the statutory laws, if you're a public, you're open to commercial, then you're subject to commercial laws.
I'm understanding that, but they carry through to your personal income tax return, and you said if you sign, your IRS income tax return at the, then you're signing your rights away. You're having to then, sacrifice your rights to the institution.
Yeah, that's for your personal income tax.
Yeah, they all carry through.
Yeah. So what we're talking about, your corporation makes income, right?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when you're say the people who come to work for you, that's their labor. So they're coming to work for you. What they can do is they can ask to be exempt for taxes because they're not claiming any income. And so that's the way they can be exempt, and that way they can be non-filers. So, but when you own a public corporation and you're open to the public, you're subjected to some of these rules.
No, and I understand that. I'm just, I guess.
Okay, so when you sign that thing, if you want, you don't want to waive your rights, so you basically sign that thing after your signature, UCC 1-308, which means I'm retaining my rights, I'm not waiving it. So that's because you're doing commercial, it's open to the public. So there's a thing called UCC, it's Uniform Commercial Code. So next to your signature, this is what I would do, UCC 1-308, and that means all rights reserved, meaning you're not waiving your rights. Because this is what happens, guys. When you sign that document for the IRS and you make a mistake, guess what? They could come after you for criminal prosecution because you've waived your rights and you've consented it. So either write all rights reserved or write UCC 1-308. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay, yes.
Could you go into quick detail about how to file a lawsuit, a federal lawsuit, 1983, or kind of the process or the nuts and bolts of it in case anybody wanted to try that?
All right, he asked the question is, how do I file a federal lawsuit? These are the elements of the federal lawsuit. Is somebody acting under color of law? All these COVID rules and everything, were they law? No, they were color of law. So it means somebody acting under color of law. And there's one other, if we can keep the chatter down just a little bit, because I'm answering a question. So there's two elements to it in Section 1983 lawsuit. One is somebody acting under color of law, and then they violated guaranteed and protected rights. So if you got arrested for, let's say you were protesting, and you were holding a sign on the sidewalk, and someone asked you to leave and you didn't, then you got arrested, you're protected under the Fourth Amendment, okay? People do get arrested, and they get railroaded in these courts, and that's why we got to appeal and stay this. But a lot of times the best thing to do, the best defense is offense. So if you get arrested by a public official, they violated your rights. If you know the Bill of Rights and they acted under color of law, then you can file a 1983 and pay $400, and basically they are subject to litigation. They're primary defendants in a federal lawsuit. Does that answer the question?
If you had 30 seconds and you knew everyone in the entire country was going to be forced to listen to what you have to say, and you're going to give them a brave truth, and I'm going to cut you off at 30 seconds if you go at 31 seconds. You have 30 seconds to tell the entire country, and they're all going to hear everything that you have to say. What would you tell them?
I would tell them that we are created in the image of light, of God. We're created in the image of God with unalienable rights. They cannot be leaned upon. And so we need to stand up and exercise these rights, and we need to hold everybody accountable in every office that wants to violate their oath of office and violate our rights and confront every illegitimate authority and basically guard every blade of grass of liberty. We need to do this.
All right, Tony Pellegrino, thank you so much.